What is the best way to deal with public speaking anxiety? To go and dig into the past and uncover where all of those fears originally came from and why? Or instead, rather than fighting with the past, to focus all of our attention on building the future? I saw a quote recently by Naval Ravikant over on X, and he said, "The central contradiction of therapy is that the source of unhappiness is thinking about yourself." And what he's saying here is that when we spend too much time thinking about our life situation, that in and of itself is the cause for a lot of our unhappiness, depression, and mental health problems. And the science actually backs this up, because there are two primary modes of your brain working that science has discovered: the DMN, the default mode network, and the TPN, the task positive network. So to put that in unjargony terms, the DMN is the state of mind that we're in when we are thinking about ourselves, we're ruminating on what's happened, we're thinking about the past or the future, and we're kind of wrapped up in our own thoughts, thinking about ourselves. Whereas the TPN, the task positive network, is when we are externally focused, when we're thinking about our work, when we are engaged in the task at hand, or we're thinking about other people or the projects and the mission that we have in life. So you can think of it as internal versus external focus. And the data is very clear. People who spend longer in that default mode network thinking about themselves, they have more depression, they have less joy and satisfaction in their lives, and greater chance of having mental illnesses, versus people who primarily are more task focused. I wanted to talk about how this relates specifically to public speaking anxiety, tell you how it showed up in my own journey, and how I think about this when I am working with my clients. Let's jump in. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Ed. I used to have really severe social anxiety and glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. And I overcame my own issues by throwing myself into acting and speaking. I became a professional actor, became a professional speaker, and then I started my business Project Charisma, where I now help professionals and business leaders to overcome the same fears and to find their own confidence when they are speaking up in public. But what should you do if you have this trauma? How should you resolve it? Well, if I go back to my own past, my own journey, I remember that when I first developed social anxiety, it came from one literal event that happened where I was sat down in a seminar room and I was experiencing a panic attack for the first time. And right as this was happening, the lecturer turned to me and said, "Ed, what do you think about this question that we are discussing?" Everyone turned to look at me, and my brain matched up the feeling of intense panic with the situation of being the center of attention and clasped them together so that one always would trigger the other one from then on out. And at the time, mental health wasn't discussed very much. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't label it as anxiety or glossophobia. I just felt like this terrible thing had happened, and it felt very much like it was my own private problem, my own individual failing. And so I bottled everything up. I didn't talk about it. I didn't ask for help. I didn't go and reach out for any advice. I just tried to hide it and bury it down. And of course, it's probably the worst thing you can do. And so talking about it for me was a necessary first step. I remember opening up to friends and, some colleagues, and then going to some CBT classes where I had to speak about it. And it was important for me to do that. There was definitely a benefit of just getting it out in the open rather than bottling it up. But it also was really important for me to move past those labels. And once I'd started talking about it and being able to see it for what it was, actually what helped me from then on was focusing all of my attention on where I wanted to go next. Not reliving the past, not turning these things over and over and over again. You already do enough of that automatically, in your own mind. So when clients come to me, they often tell me about their own version of that past story. Maybe they've had a panic attack on a call. Maybe they've had a series of terrible presentations. Maybe they've been a lifelong introvert, and being the center of attention has always been a traumatic experience for them. And in the same way, sometimes it's worth chatting about that. And I'll ask them, how did it make you feel? Or do you think that affects how you now show up? But we don't dwell on it. The more energy you give to the past, the more you keep it alive, and the more you keep fighting with it. And what you really want to do is leave it alone, detach, free yourself from all of that past trauma. And you do that by just moving on with your life and getting task focused on what you can do now to improve. So I guess if you wanted to put this in a little mantra, you could say, face it, feel it, and then free it. Face it, i.e., you can't bottle it up. You don't want to hide it. You want to be open and honest about these things. Feel it. Sometimes you have to process those emotions in order to get them out. If they've been buried there, you've got to process them. But then free it is saying, fine, what's done is done. Now I'm focusing all of my efforts on the future. It's a little bit like the analogy you might have heard from ancient Chinese proverb where the student sits down with the master and the master has a cup of water, but there's some dirt in the water. And he tells the student, how do we get the dirt out of the cup without touching the cup? And the student sits there thinking, I don't know what I can do. I can't pick it up. I can't drink it. I can't empty it. What am I supposed to do? And the master simply starts pouring more water into the cup until it overflows and it spills out of the side. And as he continues to pour, the dirty water gets filtered out. It gets flushed away. And eventually all that is left is the clean water in the cup. And there's a really similar thing that I found with public speaking where rather than trying to go back into the past to deal with them traumas, you just start having more positive experiences. You start filling that cup with clean water, and eventually it flushes out anything from the past, and it changes how you think and how you feel about public speaking. And that's really the central theme of a lot of my training. It's about giving people positive experiences. It's about giving them a scene and a setting where they speak and they face their fear, and it goes way better than they were expecting, and they feel confident and they get a good reception from the audience, and they're using the skills that they've been taught. And as those positive experiences start to stack up, that kind of set of scales of our subconscious starts to tilt back the other way, where the positives start to outweigh the negatives. And that is at the point when you can start to really move forward and you can start to enjoy the thing that once used to cause you so much trauma and anxiety and nothing but grief. So there's some thoughts from me. I'd love to know what you think about this. Is it more important to dig back into the past or focus on our future? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe wherever you're watching this or follow me if you haven't done so already. Here is to your public speaking success. Bye for now.